good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. For Jack and I, it's definitely good morning, but if you are in Australia or somewhere nearby, it will be good evening. And, it's been a good start to the new year for Rafael Nadal. He's got a win under his belt, winning in straight sets over Dominic Thiem. I don't know if you saw much of that, Jack, or you're aware of Rafa's and Dominic's performances. And I've got a poll as well, Jack, just before you answer that question, that I've put on Twitter. It's almost impossible to tell after one match, and all sorts of things can certainly go wrong for Rafa, as we saw last year. But it's still fun to do, and I've heard lots of different variations on the Rafa prognosis for the year. But I think I wouldn't have. What has changed is I would never in a million years have put top 5 a few weeks ago. But today I thought, well, let's have a bit of fun and add top 5 there. I don't think it's extremely optimistic, but I don't think it's insane.
You should have had the top 10 option in there as well, John.
Yeah, the problem was, Jack, is I was fiddling around with this for a while. And the problem was the top 50, top 20, top 10. I felt that top 20 to top 10 margin was too tight.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I do hear you. But
I know what you mean.
Top 5's a big step up, isn't it, from top 20 at the same time? But anyway, I got to see the Dominic Thiem match. It was pretty good, actually. More than pretty good. I think that's why everybody's so hyped up now. Everybody's certainly thinking the potential for Rafa is as good as we could have expected. Is it too early to say? Yeah, probably. I think you're right. One match is probably getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. At the same time, it's definitely better than I thought he would be. I thought that was going to be a little bit of a test the water situation, kind of see where he is, but go down losing gracefully, basically. And he played phenomenally. He played really, really well. Yeah. So, okay, I'm not getting quite as hyped as everybody else just yet, but I'm getting a bit excited. I am getting a bit excited. There's something there, and it's the classic. That was what Rafa's done for years. Every time I've counted Rafa out, he comes back and he's just as good as he ever was. And I'm not falling for that same old trick once again, I think, John.
I mean, he's obviously he's always erring on the side of caution in terms of, wants to be competitive is the word that you'll often hear, and compete and I guess enjoy as well as another word that we've heard from him, and we've heard that from him before. I guess I've been encouraged. I think I was particularly encouraged in the first set. I know he won the second set 6-1, but I think that was Dominic falling off a cliff. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by the serve.
Yes, I think that was the thing that certainly I was looking for, because I knew that was the injury that had sidelined him so much, and it was the ab injury. Certainly last year, I remember, particularly against Mackenzie McDonald. Was that the last match he played? In fact, yeah. I believe it was. Yeah, and he just couldn't serve anywhere near the speed he wanted to because of how much pain he was in when he was going for it. And it had been the shot as well, kind of similarly to Djokovic, that he'd improved later in his career, at age 35, 36, that's the shot he'd got bigger and bigger. So, yeah, he needs it, definitely.
The first 6 months, Jack, of 2022, I would say his serve was very good.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what we saw. Of course, we saw him win the Australian Open, of course. It wasn't the reason, but it was one of the biggest reasons that he did survive. In fact, it was a massive portion for the reason he won. I remember the match against Medvedev. There was a bunch of huge serves under a lot of pressure that he used to keep himself in it. And on a hard court, if Rafa's got any chance, he does need that serve, especially the new and improved one. But Rafa on a clay court, I mean, that is going to be. I know we're still months off it yet, but who is not getting excited for that after one match? I mean, that is
it's
going to be unreal, surely.
Yeah. What about today? I mean, what can Kubler do?
This is one of those matchups where it's kind of Rafa versus. It's not. It really does depend on Rafa. We could see him dip from the couple of days before, and Kubler does have a chance. Kubler's a pretty decent player, but he's one of those players who doesn't have a massive weapon in his game. And I always was kind of the opinion that if Rafa plays somebody who's kind of a mere mortal, so to speak, then he's gonna win pretty much 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, right. And he played a mere mortal the other day in Dom. I mean,
Yeah.
we might have said something different, but regarding Dominic, now, I have been, I think, with every month or so that passes, I become less encouraged of a potential comeback. I mean, I remember Rafa being in the doldrums for 18 months, 2 years. Novak, a little bit less than that, in and around the time he had the elbow surgery. Roger as well, of course, when it seemed like Rafa in particular had his number, but then he came back. And, you know, I've seen other players. I mean, Daniel Medvedev, we've seen him have a year of poor form, if you like, by his standards. But Dominic, now we're looking at probably back end of 2020, those ATP Tour finals when he beat Djokovic in the semi-finals. I think that's the last time. I mean, that's 3 and a bit years ago.
Yes. It's sad, actually. It's a shame. And again, you see glimmers of what he could do, where he used to be, and he can't put it together in the bigger moments. And that was kind of the story against Rafa as well. The game at 5-all or 6-5, can't remember which it was.
6-5, I think, yeah.
6-5, so it was particularly poor. It kind of just felt like as soon as he was, back against the wall, he couldn't deliver, and that's been the story for the last couple of years. And obviously, outside of the injury as well, but the injury does play a big part in it. That's why his confidence is kind of gone in the forehand side. It's a shame, John. But back to the matter at hand, Terry has just noticed that Rafa has served an returnable serve down the tee. Great start for Rafa. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll speak to you soon, Jack. I'll be in and around, so if I hear you panicking, then I'll know something's wrong, and I've got you tuned in. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, keep an eye, John. We might get a little bit of traffic in this room, so might occasionally just need to get rid of the traffic. We'll see.
Okay, no worries. I'm around. I can hear you as well.
Cool. Okay, John. Thanks very much. Right, guys. Let's get into it. Should be a fun one. I think a similar test to Dommy Team, as I was saying. Dommy Team obviously not the force he used to be, and Kubler, a good player, but more of an all-rounder. Nothing particularly huge in the backhand side or the forehand side or the serve. Probably more of a returner, actually. And that's not great news against Rafa, because unless you put in a great return, you're probably going to be in the back foot from the word go if you don't have the biggest backhand in the world. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for Kubler as he goes down 30-15 in this first game. Very interested to have a bit of discussion in the chat. If you do fancy it, shoot me some questions. I am very into this one. It's great to see Rafa back. I didn't stress that enough there with John. I'm very keen to talk Rafa, new Rafa, old Rafa. Do you know, after I watched the Dominic Team match, I turned on a bunch of highlights of Rafa of old at the French Open. I just couldn't help myself. I think that's why I'm so hyped for Rafa on clay. I've been watching him beat Basil Ashvili 6-love, 6-1, 6-love at the French Open. Stan Wawrinka in the French Open final the same year. All these highlights of him just at an insane level on that surface. It is amazing, and it gives me so much confidence just watching that back, that he can get back to the level he used to be on clay. Maybe a step down, but I think that's still French Open winning form by anybody's standards. Great little approach shot there from Rafa. Plenty of weight to the Kubler backhand. Tries to go down the line. 40-15, great start. But yeah, I'm good. Be paying a lot of attention to the serve. So far, we've seen 1 point where it's made or 2 points already, where it's made a massive difference. So, as John says, if he can keep that up, it's a great sign for his injury. Great second serve there. Oh, a bit of vintage Rafa already on the run, on the stretch. Threads the needle over the height of the net. to force the error from Kubler. Great first game. 1-0. It's that forehand. Oh my God, I've missed that forehand so much. It's just like, this is what I meant by mere mortals not being able to face Rafa. That forehand is just, it's a weapon from God. It is probably one of the best shots, if not the best single shot we've seen in the game. I have a wee think about that, actually. Is it the best single shot we've seen in the game? It's just so difficult to fight against, especially on clay, obviously, with the weight of it. But it's just, if you don't have a great backhand, you're screwed. And that's been a few already where we've seen Kubler try and counter it and couldn't quite go down the line with his own backhand. Right, questions for Kubler. Can he serve well enough to just keep himself in contention in this one? Is, of course, a home crowd behind him. Let's take that into account. Can make a difference. We saw Dimonor last year at the United Cup in a similar crowd, able to beat Rafa and, of course, beat Novak just yesterday. Right, here we go. Quite a bizarre return there from Rafa, but it does the job as he dips the ball to Kubler's feet on an approach shot. Love 15 immediately. Who had who decided to put approach to Rafa's forehand on Kubler's strategy book? Terrible idea. If that happens again, I mean, come on. Second serve immediately. Let's see what Rafa does on this return. Does he stand back? Does he come forward? Rafa of old stands back, way back, and it's a double fault. Well, 30. Immediate alarm bells. The serve not looking like it's going to do too much, even if it does go over. Kubler's average first serve speed, of course, kind of middles around 110 miles an hour. That was a little quicker, 115. There we go. Rafa's got him on the run immediately with that backhand. Too central from Kubler. And we're already at love 40. Jason Kubler. This is not looking good. Kubler, of course, able to beat Karatsev in the previous round. Was a retirement, but still a pretty decent win against a big hitter. But again, you just have a little gander at Kubler's first serve stats. He doesn't win a whole lot of points off his first serve. And immediately missing that one as well. So it's another second serve for Rafa to work with. Love 40, second serve. Big, huge loopy one into the Kubler backhand. Oh, now down the line backhand from Rafa. That's beautiful. Goes inside out. Vintage stuff. Almost wish it was the evening now so I could enjoy a little beer with this match. It's great already. Great to see Rafa back in action in this way. That was pretty easy. And it wasn't, Rafa could do that all day, every day. That wasn't like he had to play out of his skin to make that happen. Pretty worrying for Kubler, although that being said, there wasn't many first serves put into the court. Hi, Terry. It's exciting stuff, Jake. It's exciting stuff. In the comments there, commenting on my excitement. Yeah, I mean, it's... I don't know if you feel the same way, but seeing Rafa back in action is probably about the most excited I've got for tennis in a little while. I mean, it's amazing. Guy's 37. He's been out for a whole year, literally a whole year. If he gets back to his former glory, I mean, it's an amazing thing for the tour just to have somebody contesting against Novak. Maybe a little unfair in some ways. Carlos certainly doing a good job of that over the last year. Yannick getting there. We'll see if he does the same thing at the slams. Daniel, yeah, you know, he got the 1 win against Novak last year. But it's really, can somebody actually give him a challenge at the Australian Open? Unlikely from Rafa. But if he's there for the French, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the Rafa Novak square off at the French Open 2022. That was only 2 years ago, of course, less than 2 years ago. That was a phenomenal match. The one before that was a phenomenal match. I'm getting ahead of myself. 40 love, 2 love. Rafa with a pretty standard service game. This is going to be, I believe, 10 points on the bounce if he can win this point. He does. Kubler in a little bit of a hole here. In fact, it might even be more than that. It might be more than 10 points in a row. Does it tell us there? No, it does not. Oh, there we go. There's the second page. Sorry. Right. He's dropped 1 point. Early days, though. Early days. Let's look ahead a little bit. I'm going to indulge myself here, because if we are assuming it's an easy Rafa win, which is cheeky of me, I know that's not how tennis works, but I'll do it anyway. Who would he be against in the next round? He would, of course, be against Humbert or Jordan Thompson. I'm not sure if either of them have won today. I'll just find out. Humbert retired. So Jordan Thompson, another Aussie, would be his next round. Thompson a little bit more accomplished than Kubler. That would be harder, I would say. He's a big enough server that he could keep Rafa at bay, particularly if Rafa just has a little bit of a drop-off. Saying that, physicality's never really been an issue for Rafa outside of an injury, so... And seeing Rafa in a final in his first tournament back, I mean, that would just be so Rafa, wouldn't it? I don't know if... I don't even know if that would be a surprise in a lot of ways. Again, I digress. I'm getting ahead of myself. Kubler down love 3, serving to get himself on the board here in the first set. Nice slider out wide from Kubler. Rafa with an on-the-run forehand, though, immediately back into the rally. Slices, interesting, to try and keep Kubler at bay. He goes down the line. I don't think he's made that. Hasn't made many down the line so far. Still just the 1 point on the board for Kubler. Or not on the board. And of course, if Rafa was able to come through those 2 matches, this one against Kubler and the next one against Jordan Thompson, we'll probably see Dimitrov there, unless Dimitrov's sneakily went out of the tournament. He has not. No, he's against Hijikata. It could be 3 Aussies on the bounce. Would be great to see a Dimitrov-Rafa matchup once more as well. Oh, Rafa. That's pretty good. Backhand cross-court winner. That's the danger of going into the Rafa backhand repeatedly. Is it really a weakness? Don't think so. It's about as good as other people's forehands. Maybe John can remind me who it was that said that, what player said Rafa's backhand was essentially a forehand. He's racking his brain. Great little approach there from Kubler. Down the line, gets himself to 15-30. That's about the first bit of damage we've seen him do with his backhand down the line. It's not been very common so far. And it's a shot that you need. I mean, you absolutely need it to beat Rafa. So maybe there's just a little bit of nerves. That was a pretty good nerve settler there, that one. Close to a great first serve out wide, but he's going to have to go for a second again. Yeah, standing way back, gets the forehand into play, does the same thing. Kubler on the run, 15-40. Again, I'm saying that maybe Kubler's a bit nervy, but I honestly don't think that this pattern is going to change. There's not much so far that's proving me otherwise. Backhand's just got to be so much better, and I just don't think it's going to do enough damage against Rafa's forehand. I do think it's interesting that Rafa wins so many of his first encounters, because for the player on the other side of the net, it's alarming. It's alarming playing Rafa. Oh, that was close. It's a very unique experience, I would say. I wonder if I can find that stat. I'll try before we get a change of ends, try and find out how often Rafa has won his first match against a player. Unless John just has it to hand, but that's a pretty tough stat. Here we go. Break point number 2, 30-40. Rafa with a little chance there. Very tough shot, I should say, to finish it there, but didn't quite make it. And then puts a backhand cross court into the net. Kubler with a chance here. Juice. This is big. He hasn't made many first serves, in fairness to him. There's definitely been a little bit of a poor performance so far, I would say, from Kubler. So I'm not giving him quite as much credit as I could be. And Rafa misses another backhand, so it's now advantage Kubler. Yeah, I agree. I thought there was a bit of hesitation from Rafa on the first breakpoint approach, and then I thought there was a bit of hesitation on the backhand as well. Here we go. Advantage Kubler. Can he get himself on the board? Another second serve for Rafa to work with, though. Rafa gets it back into play. Spins it super short. But he's in the rally. Oh, here we go, a slice. How often does Rafa lose the point from a slice? It's my favourite stat. He doesn't lose that one. Basically, the idea of that stat is that every time an opponent slices, Rafa's going to play a forehand as the next shot. And the number of times he loses the point from that position is just insanely low. It's insanely low. As soon as you try and slice into Rafa's backhand, I mean, he's going to find the forehand. And if he's got a forehand inside out, you're screwed. You're definitely screwed. Lovely serve from Kubler. Enough to force the error. First bit of real quality from the Aussie, I would have said. It's advantage Kubler. Lovely serve down the tee. Doesn't really give himself an impactful forehand, though, but that's lovely. Rafa's still defending it well, though. Kubler opting to slice. Rafa with the inside out forehand. Do we see the same pattern of play? It's a backhand down the line. Yes, we do. Another 0.1 from Rafa. Again, just pay attention to it. It's very, very interesting to see how often Rafa is able to work the point from the forehand inside out position, having had a slice to work with. It's just it's a masterclass every single time, because actually Kubler dealt with that quite well, but then Rafa with the backhand down the line, it's almost like, I don't know, he feeds off it. It's amazing. Kubler with a nice slider out wide. Not enough though. Rafa with the forehand cross court to neutralise. That was loose from Rafa there. Again, had a little approach shot chance. John pointing that out. He hesitated a bit in the first one, hesitates a bit in that one as well. Advantage Kubler again. Rafa with a great return. Oh, that was great, actually. Very, very happy with that. Rafa not as good as other players at stepping in and taking on the first serve early, but he did it there. That's why it looked a little unorthodox from the Spaniard. Maybe that's an area of the game that he's been working on. I mean, that was a great one as well. Defends that one perfectly. Can he put it up in the air? If he's made that, he's not made that, surely. No, he didn't quite make that. Kubler with a great little 1-2 there. Serve out wide and a backhand down the line approach. He's playing a lot better now. Still not earned a game for it, though. And I am clambering in the background to try and find that stat about how often Rafa wins his first match against different players. I don't think I'm going to find it, to be honest. It's pretty tough. Advantage Kubler. Big serve down the tee. Misses it. Rafa still in this one. Second serve. Standing way back. Serve to the forehand. Why not, Kubler? Lovely backhand down the line. Oh, Rafa defending that masterfully. I love that shot. Kubler doing a good job of hanging into this one. But it's just back to forehand cross to Kubler backhand cross. And it's a drop shot out of nowhere. So difficult to deal with. I'm really enjoying this. This is great. I've actually seen a little bit of nerves from Rafa. And, well, I don't know if we call it nerves. Probably not nerves, but just hesitation in this game from Rafa, I should say. It feels like a bit of a must win. I know it sounds a little bit on the nose, but I guess what I mean by that is that Rafa is looking a little hesitant sometimes. He's looking a little human. If you take this game, maybe that continues. If you don't take this game, Rafa feels like he's got a second wind and probably will start to loosen up a bit. Slice to the Kubler backhand. Kubler opting to slice. Rafa with the forehand. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Exactly what I was saying before. As soon as the other player slices, I mean, Rafa was round there in record time. Absolutely love it. That's the idea with the Rafa slice. If you get yourself a slice back, then you can get yourself a forehand inside out. Rafa's a protege, actually. Casper Ruud, using exactly the same tactics. Obviously not quite as effective, though. Given Rafa's forehand, as I said, probably the best shot ever. I can go into that if anybody wants me to. Rafa in this point. Lovely forehand cross court to the Kubler backhand. Kubler in danger now unless he changes it up. He does. Opts to slice. Kubler with a lovely forehand inside out. Rafa defending. It's a drop shot from Kubler. It's pretty good. Is it going to be enough, though? No, it's not. That's a lovely little bit of Vamos action there. Backhand smash in the air. The crowd are loving it. 4-0. I'm enjoying this. Great stuff. Great stuff. Anybody in the chat enjoying it? Feel free to have a little chat with me. That's why I'm here. I want to talk all things Rafa. 4-0. He is flying here. So do we start to see Rafa loosen up? Does he go a little bit bigger, a bit more aggressive than he was going before? I mean, that was pretty aggressive, to be fair. We saw a couple of amazing shots from Rafa. Starts the game off with a very, very close first serve, second serve. Second serve to the Kubler backhand, tries to go inside out immediately. It's pretty tough. Total points won 22-8 so far for Kubler. Or for Rafa, sorry, I should say. This is going to be a pretty difficult hill to climb back up. First serve out wide for Rafa. Doesn't quite make it. Second serve. Is Rafa playing more aggressively than before? Says Sport and Politics in the chat. No, I wouldn't have said so far. Maybe not enough of a sample size to choose from. Sport and Politics. I think the one thing I'm seeing that's a little different is he's stepping forward on first serve occasionally to try and take it a bit earlier. That's not very Rafa-esque. He is happy to sit back on both returns. Apart from that, I mean, a lot of this is just Rafa of old. You know, if an opponent slices, Rafa's going to find a forehand. That's certainly not abnormal. And the other patterns of play are very similar. You know, he's trying to find his own forehand cross into his opponent's backhand, waiting for the other opponent to concede. You know, they either go backhand line too early or they hit an unforced error trying to go cross, because Rafa's never going to miss cross on his forehand. He just doesn't do it. There is a feeling of that. I do agree in a lot of ways. I know what you mean. But I also agree that maybe we're just looking for it a little bit too early. I mean, Rafa was pretty damn aggressive in the past as well. I think there's a little bit of a misconception that he's a bit more of a defensive player, but he hits with so much heaviness and weight that generally, I mean, he's playing aggressively pretty much every single shot. If what you mean by that is he playing any flatter? Don't think so. I also wouldn't have said so. From what I can see so far, you know, the winners are the normal winners from Rafa. He's not trying to flatten stuff out, not taking on too much risk. Again, I would imagine the biggest differences will come in the serve and the return. That serve, though, old school Rafa, 100 miles an hour out wide on the first serve, and it's enough to give him the second shot as a winner. I think that was a serve and volley. I think serve and volley implies that you decided to volley before you hit the serve, if that makes sense. He did a serve and survey. You know, he saw that he had the volley opportunity. Lovely shot back behind. And Rafa is 5-0 up in Brisbane. How has Nadal fared in Brisbane in the past? I seem to remember him winning a title there. I'll just confirm for us. This is great stuff, by the way. I just love to see him back in action like this. And in the absence of Scottish players doing well, it's nice to see somebody that I used to... Well, I still support him. Of course I support him. He was always my second favourite, Rafa. Trying not to be too biased, but you know, everybody's got their favourites. I think Rafa's just such a fascinating player to watch. So, you know, similar to Novak as well, but I just, something about Rafa's game was a little bit more alien. Just made it so much more exciting to watch. Just like, how on earth is he doing that? Just felt like nobody else could perform in the same way. So it's just great to see him back. Really is. Especially playing like this. This is a joke so far. So the last time he was there, say Sport and Politics, was in 2017. I'll just confirm that now. Yeah, sorry. He's only been there once and he lost to Rafa when he was there. That does seem to ring a bell, actually. I think I remember that match. Where was it he won? Was it Sydney, maybe? It wasn't Sydney. No, he's only played one match in Sydney in his career and he lost it. It was somewhere else in Australia, but it's not coming back to me. Of course, he did win the Australian Open. You know, he's got a pretty good history recently at the Australian Open. And actually, to be honest, I think people again, kind of because their expectations of Rafa are so high, they always say that Rafa at the Australian Open, it's a bit of a bogey slam for him. He's still pretty good there. I mean, it's pretty quick. Obviously not the greatest for Rafa, but if he's serving well, he doesn't really lose to anybody he shouldn't be losing to. At the Australian Open, I mean, I'm looking at this, against players ranked outside of the top 10, he's 68-5. Federer being one of them in 2017, that hardly counts. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Tsonga, another one that he lost to in 2008. Hardly counts again for Dasco. Yeah, okay, we can count that. Mackenzie McDonald last year when he sustained the injury. And Leighton Hewitt at number 11. I mean, these players are, hardly ranked outside the top 50. My point is, when he's playing well in hot conditions, he will win against 90% of the tour. Literally. Oh, match timeout for Kubler. Forearm injury, says Terry. I don't have my commentary on, so I couldn't tell you for sure. I agree though. Yeah, the point in particular that I was thinking of was when Kubler sliced it almost it was very near the sidelines. He had Rafa's speed to get around it. It was absolutely phenomenal. As quick as ever. But I don't think, well, I certainly didn't have any doubts that he could still be that fast. I think it was more about how well he was going to serve, how well he was going to return. The return tends to be a shot that if you've had a little bit of time off, can be a little bit harder to time. But mainly the serve. Yeah, I really wasn't sure how he was going to do there. But so far, good stuff. He's placed it well. A few flatter ones down the tee. That's the serve he was trying to improve with Moya over the last few years. The sort of flatter one with a bit of speed. And it was the ab injury that stopped him from delivering on that serve in the last year or so. So good stuff, John.
I'm back briefly while we have this medical timeout. I want to add something as well about the serve. It wasn't just the ab; it was also the hip too. So when he had that sort of 2 or 3 months where we were not seeing much footage of him practicing on the clay in April, May, and June, when we kept getting tournament after tournament of him withdrawing from it. You know, we'd have the video for Barcelona and Madrid. He did Barcelona and Madrid as a pair, but the other 2 clay court tournaments, Monte Carlo and Rome, I think, were done in separate videos. But the hip also was hindering him from serving in that period. So he didn't practice serves. So he was about 2 weeks away from the French Open and he hadn't hit a serve since January, basically. Right. So, and he was doing a lot of behind the closed doors practices. Now, I mentioned how unusual I thought that was even as early as April. I mean, I'm not someone who called him not playing the French Open in April, because actually I kept saying, oh, he'll be all right. He'll be all right. But yeah. I was a bit concerned that he kept doing everything behind closed doors. And somebody said to me at the time, I'm just watching Rafa just being unbelievable again. Somebody said to me at the time, oh, it's not unusual. And actually it is. Look at the last 5 weeks compared to the 5 or 6 weeks I was talking about court. You know, the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've just seen hundreds of videos, thousands of videos. I've been in touch with people that have got Instagram accounts who just happen to live in Kuwait and said, can you give me the video and I'll post it on our channel and stuff. So but what I'll come back to is the hip was also hindering him from serving too.
Yeah, it's something that I suppose I'd overlooked, and it also just it makes it clear. Obviously, he was out for a whole year, John. I'm saying that this like it's a medical marvel, but more what I'm saying is he took his time coming back deliberately because of how hindered he was. So if he is back now after 52 weeks, he's obviously put a lot of work in, you know, to get back, and the results seem to be showing immediately.
Yeah. Kubler is threatening to get off the mark here, at least. Yeah,
30-15, to be fair. It's the closest he had a few game points, of course. 40-15, maybe I'm a touch behind. So he's got 2 game points.
Yeah, he did. My internet's a bit sketchy, by the way, so if I do break up,
that's fine, John. Don't worry. I think I've been getting the gist of everything you've been saying so far, so don't worry. Two game points. Can he do it? Can he make the crowd go wild? Needs to get a few more first serves in though, right? I mean, there we go. Nice first serve out wide. Maybe nowhere near enough though. As soon as Rafa gets that forehand cross into play, it's just danger zone for him. Such a nice shot from Rafa to defend that forehand down the line.
Gilgross said the other day that as soon as Rafa got up in the rally against Dominic Thiem, he never let that go. You know, that was something that was particularly impressive. Was that, you know, as soon as it was 60-40 in the rally for Rafa, that was done.
That is Rafa. That is 100% Rafa to a T. That's why he's so good on clay, because the weight of shot that he can put up when he's in offense is so difficult to turn around. It is so difficult to find a spot in the court with enough counterweight to change the momentum of the rally. Now, that's what I was watching when I was watching those highlights the other day. I was kind of watching for that exact same kind of pattern of play. You know, if Rafa's in offense, how does the opponent manage to turn it around? And Stan Wawrinka, who's got a lot of power, just was helpless. As soon as that first huge forehand went to the backhand, there was nothing he could do. You know, without a perfect backhand down the line, and it's just such a risky shot. It's amazing. Honestly, this guy is he's amazing. So good.
We obviously need a healthy year as well. That's the other thing that can just, you know, we had 15 matches winning streak, I think, at the beginning of 2022, and things were just, you know, in the third set against Carlos at Indian Wells that year, which was actually the 15th match in that winning run. You know, he was just sensational. So was Carlos, by the way, and it probably would have been remembered in even better light had Rafa not got injured and his year kind of unraveled from there. But what did I want to say? Yes, we've seen. So I just hope that we get a few weeks, a few months, maybe even longer of injury-free Rafa, because it feels like a long time since we've had 6 to 12 months with him uninjured.
Yeah, I'd have to have a little think about that. Did he have
pre-COVID? It would be definitely maybe he might have withdrawn from a tournament in 2019 or something like that. But
yeah,
I remember. I think he withdrew from Paris-Bercy in 2019. I think, but it was a sort of precautionary decision regarding his wrist.
Yeah, in fairness, it does feel like he makes a few precautionary decisions when he is coming up to a tournament that he wouldn't have particularly fancied anyway. Like if he wins the French Open, I wouldn't be surprised if rest and recovery time runs into Wimbledon, for example.
But listen, here's a couple of interesting clues, or here's one at least interesting clue for you. He signed up for an exhibition in March in Las Vegas, which I think he was due to play last year, although it might not be Las Vegas, somewhere in the US. I think it is Las Vegas, to play an exhibition against Carlos. He was supposed to play an exhibition exactly a year ago, but that tells you that you know, he's probably going to play Indian Wells. So, or at least that's in his mind. His plan at the moment is to play Indian Wells.
Yeah, of course. Former champion there. He has only won twice. He's won twice. I think 2013 and 2009 off the top of my head. I'm just going to double check that. Yes, he did win those 2 years.
I mean, he could have and should have won it in 2022, but it feels like it's the hard court tournament where he's probably a bit closer to the hard court specialists, you know, or even ahead of one or two of them, you know, such as maybe Daniel Medvedev, maybe Novak. The gap between him and Novak, I would imagine it's not going to get any closer than it is at Indian Wells.
No. Yeah, I would agree, but I still don't see him beating Novak at Indian Wells. It's a hard court nonetheless.
No, me neither. But
I do hear exactly what you're saying. It's the closest it could be, but I don't really think he's got a chance against Novak on hard courts. I mean, what's the I'll bring out the streak for those who aren't aware of it, but it is a lengthy streak of sets won against Rafa for Novak against him in a hard court. And I mean, this is a good topic of discussion, actually, John. I know Rafa facing 2 break points at the moment, but you still feel as though this set's a done deal. I will just get that stat up because we want to know, does Novak have a little bit of competition at the Australian Open, or is it another done deal for him? And my gut feeling is, no, he doesn't. I don't think Rafa is able to fight against. I don't think he's able to throw anything at Novak that he couldn't have before. And I mean, it's a streak of 20. I will find out in a second, John, but I believe it's around.
You keep looking for it because I can tell you how many years it is. It's 10 or 11 even. 2013 US Open Finals, the last time he won a set, and of course I think he won that particular match. And I think did he have 3 finals or 2 finals against Novak in New York? At least 2, and it's 1 apiece, or it's 3, and Rafa's won 2 of them. But I think they might have had 3 finals in New York, and Rafa's won 2.
2010 and 2013.
It's not another one? No other one? Okay, so it's just 2 then maybe.
That's the 2 that Rafa won, sorry, and then Novak.
Oh yeah, right. And then 2012 he lost, right?
Yes. No, that was Andy.
2011, yes, of course it was.
Yeah, that's it.
He's fought back from love 40. So how many sets is it?
I've still not got it yet, I'm afraid. It's not quite as fast.
I mean, I can guess it's about 20.
It's about 20. It could even be more than that, John. This is why it's worth looking up.
They just haven't played that often in the last. They haven't played on hard court since 2020 at the ATP Cup.
Have they not? Oh my God.
Nope.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Sure.
Wow. Yeah, it's a fair while. Yes, you're right. You're exactly right. And yeah, there we go. That is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot to count up.
It's a lot. It's about 20, and I think it's kind of. That was a poor shot there from Rafa, but
19 is the final count, John.
And Rafa has sealed the set. 19, yeah. So I won't foul for 20. I think the match that is encapsulates this gap that's a terrible shot from Kubler, by the way, at deuce there. I thought he had such an easy put away. I know he's won the set. I'm just talking about like 2 points before that. Kubler has a very easy volley that I can only imagine it was complacency that led him to put it into the tram line.
I'd love to rewind it, but unfortunately on tennis TV, you can't rewind any further than 2.5 minutes. For some reason, still a problem in 2024. But
it was deuce, and I mean, yeah, he could have broken serve, and then things are a bit interesting. But it was deuce, and Rafa's on the defensive, and basically Kubler comes into the net, and he's got a fairly easy put away on the forehand volley. But somehow he put it in the tram line, and I honestly think you and I would have made it and won the point. Yeah, I think it would be more painful though for us, because if you and I were playing Rafa, and mentally our challenge is to win a point. If we got that far up in the rally and we still didn't win the point, I think we might as well just go home. But no, the match, I didn't quite finish my sentence, but you can probably guess what I'm about to say. Can you guess what I'm about to say?
No, sorry, go on. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
This 10 years and 19 sets is kind of all about one match in a way that defines that gap, because it's the 2019 final. Because it's the United Cup match. I think it was 1 or 2 tie breaks, that United Cup match. It's Australian Open. It means something. Of course, every match means something, but it's almost, De Minaur winning that match yesterday. It's fantastic for De Minaur, but that doesn't define the rivalry in a hard court. Rafa was actually close to winning a set that day, but that 2019 final, and it's not just because it's the Aussie Open final, it's not just because it's a hard court, and it's not just because it was straight sets. It's because the expectation going into that final was this is going to be close. Rafa's playing unbelievable. He demolished Tsitsipas in the semi-finals. So that's why that match, in a way, if that match happens again, it's like, well, that's the gap between them on a hard court. That day, when it had been a 6-year streak, and it wasn't even barely noticed as a streak at that point, But it's like that match happens and you go, wow. And then actually you look at the stats and you go, oh, actually he hasn't lost to him a set to him in 6 years. And he's won 14 sets in a row, which probably became 17 that day. And so then that becomes something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And I think that's the moment people kind of sat up and were like, is this a thing that's been going on for years? I mean, should we have been surprised by this? And I guess the feeling is by a lot of people, no, this Novak played exceptionally well that day, and there's an argument to be made that was the best final he's ever played in his career.
I mean, off the top of my head, it is. Maybe a Novak fan may disagree, and that's fine. But that's the one performance where he was basically as close to perfection as you're going to get.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be said for the confidence that Novak had going into that match, and the reason he could play that well is that he felt like there's not much Rafa could have done to hurt him. And I would say, I think the United Cup match, or the ATP Cup match, was probably a bit more reflective of how that rivalry goes on a hard court. Rafa still has his moments where he comes close, but generally when when it's down to the brass tacks, Novak is the man that comes through pretty much every single one of their hardcore meetings. Just serving a bit better generally, but also has the weaponry to actually hurt Rafa from the back of the court. You can't really put Novak under pressure by spinning it high to the backhand. He does deal with that really well. So, yeah.
I think there's some predictions maybe in the chat here, because Kittery is saying Rublev 2-love. I'm guessing that's a prediction for his match, obviously coming up against Liam Brody, which
friend of the show.
Yeah, exactly, friend of the show. Damien and Mario will be bringing us that. I think they're due to take the court in about an hour from now. We've had a few this week. We've done a lot of live streams, Jack, and we've had a few overlaps. So it's no big deal. I did a stream once that started before Raducanu's match, like a couple of days ago, that she had against Rusa. And I think I had like 5 people watching me, while I had about 60 people watching the other stream of Raducanu Rusa. And the match I had was all right. I think it was Hurkat Shang. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had a few come over when the match finished, but a combination of Raducanu and the pulling power that she has, but also the fact that started before me, I think, happened. So, yeah, we've had a few overlaps, but actually they've worked out quite well. In fact, Raducanu just finished her match. I don't know if you saw the result, but she lost 6-1 in the third.
I did see that.
6-1 yeah, 6-1.
6-1
in the third. Yeah,
and a tiebreak in the second.
A lot of people at the end of set 2 were talking about the. Yeah.
Sorry, go on, John.
I mean, she was up a double break in the first and did really. She was up a double break in the first set and did really well to regain her composure in the tiebreak, including a couple of unbelievable drop shots. By the way, Rafa is off court at the moment, for those of you wondering why we're on a bit of a monologue, at least between us, regarding other things. But yeah, a lot of people were talking about the level from Raducanu. From both players actually throughout those first 2 sets.
Yeah, from Raducanu and Svitolina, sorry. Yeah, I did. You can tell me, John, because I didn't get to see it. I assume it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Was it Grand Slam winning stuff?
I wish I could tell you as well. I know. I wish I could tell you as well, Jack, but I was watching some United Cup action at the same time as Miles and Bianca and Isabel, who, by the way, did reference your every time Svitolina plays stat of 7-6, I think it is, against world number ones.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that got a mention. Yeah, but no, I wish I could tell you, but I can just tell you what they were saying, and also what people in the live chat were saying, that they were sort of, oh, this could be a match of the year contender, blah blah blah. I mean, but of course, I guess the third set meant it won't finish that way. But yeah, I think it's probably been a positive couple of matches for Emma.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely. But I mean, no, yeah, definitely. I don't want to say too much negatively, because to be honest, there were very few matches where she was able to bring that level at all, full stop, even for small portions of the match. So that is very promising. At the same time, I don't think the problem has been, can she reach that level again? It's been how consistently can she reach that level? And if she's falling away in the third set, there's maybe still physical issues there, and Yes, positives overall, but I think there's still improvements to be made if she's going to contest for a slam again.
I'm just listening to Rafa and the umpire. Hang on.
Well, John does that. Of course, we have just got started again. Tony watching on. Oh, that's not Tony. Sorry, that's Rafa's dad. Rafa winning the first point of this game, however, love 15. Kubler trying to get into the game with a great first serve, but already love 15, second serve. Things not looking too good.
Did you see or hear that Rafa got a time violation warning?
Just saw it from Terry there. What happened?
He just took too long coming back from the break, which
probably
I think
just didn't know the rule. Maybe, I mean, it's changed.
I mean, no, I think he knows. I think he knows the rule. But he was a long time. I think 5 minutes is that the limit? 5 minutes.
It depends what you're doing. So you can go longer than that if you've got to go to the toilet and change your clothes. Depends what he was doing.
Yeah, so. I suspect he did both because he was gone for that long. But anyway, he got a time violation warning one way or another, so that's that. Although it doesn't seem to have bothered him too much.
No, not at all. Love 40 immediately, 3 break points. Not really doing a whole lot to get there, but this is the Rafa effect. It's just feeling like you're in jail as the other player the whole time. There's just nothing you can do to counter that forehand. Case in point is Kubler goes long on a backhand off of a pretty nothing ball from Rafa. And again, nothing ball in inverted commas. I feel like that forehand cross from Rafa, you know how I was talking about Rafa's forehand being potentially the best shot in anybody's arsenal. That forehand cross, potentially the best shot in anybody's arsenal in the game. Because it's just so difficult to counter. So heavy. And he's just not going to miss it, like, ever. So he's great at it.
I remember a day, he had a very bad day with that shot. I remember a day, though, when he had a pretty bad day with various parts of his game, and it was against Rublev at Monte Carlo 3 years ago. And I remember him hitting a few forehands into the net that day. Yeah,
that was a fairly rough match. He still had his moments. It's Rafa on clay, right?
I mean, Rafa on clay, but yeah. I mean, win 3 sets.
Yeah, I remember that one though as well. And he did play well for that set that he did win. To be fair, I don't want to take too much away from Rubles that day.
He was. This is Rafa. It's only Rafa can do. He was pulling a few rabbits out of hats at times, which was an example of actually in a way that he's sort of not playing that well. But he that was also the day when he said his serve was a disaster. So I don't remember that.
Yes, yeah, I did remember that. I think he probably only double faulted like 5 times or something. But here's an interesting one about Rafa's double faulting stats actually, because I remember specifically watching the match where Rafa double faulted the most times in his career. I wonder if you can tell me what that is, John. Maybe it's pretty tough.
No idea. I mean, it's obviously not. It's not like Wimbledon final 2008 or anything like that. You have to tell me.
No. It's his quarterfinal against Denis Shapovalov. And was it 2022? Is that only last year? No, 2 years ago. It's got to be 2 years ago.
Oh, right. Okay, is it that match?
Yeah. He had a lot of problems with it that day, and he double faulted 12 times. And of course, I know club players who've double faulted 12 times in one game, John.
I do remember now that sort of that double fault thing happening that day. I'd be interested to know if many of those double faults came in the 5th set. And the reason why I'm asking that is, and they might not have done, it might have been none. I just remember that 5th set where he'd been struggling for the previous 2 sets physically. I don't know if you remember the image of him with the heat and having that. He was blowing the sort of thing on his face. We often see people with the ice, but he had that kind of air conditioned thing that was blowing onto his face at one point and looked very unwell because of the heat, which was in a way that's a good thing because some of those things can pass. Fortunately, and unfortunately, it did pass enough, but he was still struggling. And in that 5th set, he was serving well, but aggressively. Yeah, because he just didn't want to be getting in, and he got an early break. I think he was up, I don't know, 2-love, 3-1, something like that. and that was a surprise because there was one-way traffic in the previous 2 sets. So I just wonder if maybe he was taking a few more risks in that 5th set. And there may have been
I can tell you actually, because I remember seeing the stats for the 5th set. It might have felt that way, but actually the 5th set was fairly clean on serve for Rafa. He didn't lose too many points.
Yeah, right. And I do remember that. So actually, I'm contradicting myself a bit, but I just remember thinking it was his serve that got him over the line.
Yeah.
And Shapovalov just being
Shapovalov. There was a lot of
point from memory as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There was a feeling from me and Owen that Shapo should have won that match, and he just didn't have the belief to do it. He just didn't know what to do in the 5th set when all the momentum was with him. And it was one of those ones. It's kind of the story of Dennis's career, right? And obviously now 100 odd, whatever it is in the world. I know he's been injured, but it was not looking great before he went out with injury. He was on a pretty bad losing streak, and just didn't quite have the, I guess, game awareness to know what to do in that 5th set.
Yeah, very much so. There's also been some interesting comments from a former coach of his, not Delgado, another one. I might have the pronunciation wrong. Is it Yuzhny? Maybe was that a coach of?
Yeah, Yuzhny was. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Mikhail, right?
Yeah. So he has made some comments that are. I mean, the split apparently was fine and it was sort of mutual, blah blah blah. But he said coaching Shapo at times I was more of a hitting partner than a coach, I think, is his words. And they had some disagreements over scheduling and one or two other things.
I think Yuzhny said, and I quote, "Shapo raps too much." That's definitely slander. I'm not quoting him saying that, but he did say something along those lines. I think he said something along the lines of Shapovalov does not spend enough time training. And I suppose the subtext to that is he raps and stuff. He's got other stuff going on in his career, which is a shame. I think Shapo's definitely devoted to the game, so it's pretty difficult to argue that. But
yeah.
We've been a bit sidetracked there, John. It looks like Rafa's won a game in the meantime. He's down 15-love in this game, but he's still flying. I mean, Kubler had to come up with a pretty great serving volley there to make that happen. Seems like every rally he's just going his way.
Yeah, maybe since the 5-love game, it might have been a bit different, but actually those first 5 games, I didn't realize that Kubler was hindered at all. I hadn't noticed anything, because of course that's when he starts taking the treatment. Perhaps since then, despite winning a game, which is something he hadn't done previously. Because I mean, when Rafa's doing the run around forehands, and I loved your comment, by the way, about the slice, and we saw it happen about 2 points later when you were saying that Rafa does a slice and then it gives him a chance to do a forehand of some description. And we saw it like 2 points later, and it was an unbelievable forehand cross-court winner. And so those first 5 games, I didn't notice anything particularly different with Kubler, but I did notice some pretty good things going on the Rafa side of the net. Humbert, his withdrawal is also probably good news for Rafa. I do think he's someone who could have caused Rafa a lot of trouble. I think Thompson may not, but Humbert's withdrawal, I think, is more good news for Rafa.
Yeah, I think Thompson could on a good day. He's got a good serve, got a good forehand, kind of classic ATP player in that kind of sense. He's got enough firepower to just kind of rattle off service points, and on a hot day that could be enough. But most likely, again, similar to Kubler, probably doesn't have the ad court defense to stay alive on that side. One of the shots, I think this is very interesting, that a lot of the players' strengths on that backhand side comes in how well they can play offensively. So, they might be able to play a stunner down the line every so often. They might be able to play a cross-court cannon every so often that gets them up in the point. But so few of them can actually defend well on that side. So if you're playing forehands cross, or if Rafa's playing forehands cross to your backhand, I'd love to see a little bit of shape down the line, a bit more height. Novak does that very well. The kind of shot that just doesn't look risky. There's few players that can do it. I think, I'm trying to remember the coach that said this, but suggested that players nowadays are very kind of one-dimensional. Serve, forehand, and he's got like Steph Tsitsipas is quite a good example of that. Somebody who's like right at the top of the game, but one of the best serves and forehand combos in the game, but just can't push back those past those other like 3 players who've got the whole skill set basically.
I mean, it's so as a coach, I mean, it's not. I'm sure if it was Craig O'Shaughnessy, you'd remember that.
Yeah, I don't think it was Craig O'Shaughnessy. Maybe it was actually. I don't know. Could have been.
But I know he had some pretty strong words regarding Steph's return after the ATP Tour finals. Who's second? I mean, okay, where the Australian Open? Where are we at right now in terms of runners and riders? I mean, we all know who number 1 is, as long as the wrist injury isn't too serious. Who's next, and in what order?
Carlos. No. Daniel. I think Daniel. Yeah.
What is going on, chat? You and your Daniel optimism. I mean, first of all, the US Open. When you went no, I thought you were going to go Yannick, and I was about to get my arguments as to why I still think Carlos is second. But wow, you think Daniel?
I think Danny. I think maybe the big question there is what you just suggested. Like, where do you put Yannick? I think he has to come fourth. He's just not proven it at a slam yet. We need to see him play a match or win a match, because he's played amazing matches at the slams, but he hasn't had a massive result. He's always come close, and he's not quite made it. The 2022 US Open being maybe the best example. You know, he has match point against the eventual champion. We need to see him win one of those before I start getting a little bit more optimistic, because I just don't think he has proven it quite yet. And Daniel, I'm afraid, is just the hardcourt machine. He doesn't quite like the Australian conditions as much. It's not even for his game. It's just like fitness-wise, it doesn't really suit. He tends to get a lot more tired earlier in the tournament. So there is that kind of risk factor. And I do believe that was one of the factors that played in his loss against Korda last year. He wasn't in the best condition, even if he wasn't playing his best tennis either.
No warm-up this year, I think, for Daniel.
No warm-up, really?
I think. I mean, he's not playing anywhere right now. He's not in Hong Kong. He's not in Brisbane.
Yeah, I've just seen photos of him and his baby. Maybe he's just hanging out at home.
There you go. That's his warm-up. Probably some computer games as well, knowing Daniel.
Yeah, a bit of FIFA.
Yeah, he likes that, yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to stand by that, John. I think Daniel's got to take second, then Carlos, then Yannick, and then Rafa, maybe. Is it too early?
I mean, I'll come to Rafa in a second, because I think I've still got to address. The thing is with, so I'm putting Carlos second. It is close between these 3. That's why it's a debate, and I'm sure there's some people out there. I think there's a lot of people. I think I put a poll actually out there, maybe on YouTube community, and it got a lot of votes. So it was a pretty good sample size, like 1,000 votes or something. And I think Yannick came first, but people who are emotional and recency bias and all the rest of it, I think may well have played a part. Sometimes fandom can definitely play a part in that. It's why when we put these polls on when we've got a match, and it's like 87% went for Raducanu, I think, to beat Svitolina, which I think says more about what people want. We've got a break point here, by the way, for Kubler.
Oh, I'm a little behind again. It was a double.
Oh, I'm actually looking at the score on the screen, but my TV is probably a bit closer to you, because I'm at 30 all on my TV.
Well, I saw a double fault at 30 all, just to keep the audience involved there. So we're at 30-40 on the back of that double fault. Rafa's so good at saving break points, though, John. That's not something I've got into. You can imagine why he's a little better on break point than he is on 30 all juice, etc.
Because of the side, yeah.
Because of the side, exactly. As a lefty, a little bit easier to immediately get to the backhand. He does there, gets his own forehand cross into play. Rafa now dominating with his forehand. Can Cooper stay alive here? It is neutral, to be fair. Now we've got a Rafa backhand. Cooper playing well, but this isn't looking good. No. Nope. Just nothing Kubler really could do to get out of that pattern of play there.
So this trio, I think probably on the men's tour, apart from the Rafa question, it is maybe the most intriguing one. Is because there's pros and cons to all three right now. You've highlighted the Yannick ones perfectly. You've certainly highlighted the pros for Daniel, but I think these cons put him at 4 for me, and I think the gap between him and Carlos has been highlighted. Mm-hmm. And did they play at the ATP Tour Finals? I think they did, didn't they? Carlos and Daniel Medvedev. I'm not sure if they're in the same group.
Yes,
I think and Carlos beat him. That's what, and Carlos did beat him. Yeah, and this is probably the worst kind of conditions for Carlos, certainly at this point in his career. And yet that sort of return to norm is there after, I think, the US Open right now. Okay, here's the gap, but this is the way I'm going to sum up the reason I'm putting Carlos second and Daniel fourth and Yannick third is the blip. That's a blip. That was US Open result. At the moment, it looks like a blip in terms of that rivalry between Carlos and Daniel. The rivalry between Yannick and Daniel has been changed. I would even maybe go as far as transformed. Each of the next 2 matches that they had after Yannick stemmed the flow, and Rafa's held, by the way, but each of the 2 matches that followed, I was sure that Yannick would win, and he did.
I mean, Yannick worked that out. He kind of said it himself how much work he needed to do in that. Was it the Beijing final? I think what he was saying afterwards, just saying, thanking Daniel for making him such a great player, because he had to come up with new parts of his game to live with him. And it does feel like he's now got a consistent skill set to beat Daniel. Saying that, it's in Australia, in a slam.
5 sets, I know.
It's 5 sets. And if that matchup came, John, I would put Daniel above Yannick.
I think Yannick could do with getting it done in 3 or 4. That's for sure. I saw him against Zverev at this most recent US Open, and again, he just 5 sets. We saw him losing 5 sets at the French Open to Daniel Altmaier as well. 5 sets to Novak at Wimbledon. It's a lot of 5-set defeats that for what has been a pretty fledgling career. When we look at Carlos in 5 sets, you know what his record is?
9-3, maybe. That's too many.
I think it's 9. It's certainly 1 loss, and that was Berrettini. That was Berrettini Australian Open 2022. So it's 2 years ago. So a different Carlos, albeit we knew that this guy was coming at that point, and it was a deciding set tiebreak as well. So it's not like he faded away in that 5th set. So that's pretty impressive. 9-1. That's the kind of difference between him and Yannick, really, in terms of winning a slam and not winning one, I think, at the moment. So I do get it, but I probably am putting Daniel 4th. I'm surprised you're putting Daniel 2nd.
Daniel on hard courts, I don't know. It's quite hard to underrate him, and I did underrate him at the US Open, and then we saw him in the final. And then I overrated him, to be fair, and Novak was Novak.
Doesn't get injured that often, which also then means that this stat becomes a bit starker, and especially as we have 2 hard court slams a year. He hasn't won one or looked like winning one since that Australian Open loss to Rafa.
Yeah.
And I think we might be. I remember going into the Australian Open final of 2021, the one he lost quite badly to Novak. In a way, it was a different match, but the sort of gap between Novak and him that day was back there again in New York recently. But I went before that. I remember telling Jamie, and I said to Jamie, I think this guy's going to win 4 or 5 slams, something like that. Right now, I think it's 50-50 whether he wins another one. But I'm more optimistic now than I was a year ago. And maybe it's 60-40. Maybe it's something like that. That's harsh.
To be honest, it's Novak versus the rest of the field, isn't it? And it doesn't really matter who we think is the next in line, because I probably think Novak beats any of them.
I mean, Daniel's not winning Wimbledon. He's not winning French Open in his career. I don't think that's a controversial prediction. It's not a 100%, but it's a 95% likelihood or 90% likelihood he's not winning either of those two slams.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at, is he going to win an Australian Open? You mentioned one or two things about him in Australia compared to New York. Plus, the Novak thing in Australia seems to be bigger than it is in New York.
Yeah.
Then he's also of the batch of players. He's not old, far from it, but it's not like he's got 20 years ahead of him, or 15 years ahead of him, like maybe someone like Carlos or Yannick has.
Yeah.
So this is not me. So you can't clip this and say I didn't say he wouldn't. I'm just saying that feeling I had exactly 3 years ago when I said to Jamie on the phone about 1 or 2 days before that final, this guy's winning 4 or 5. That feeling in that conversation feels a long way away. Yeah,
I hear you. I still am not going to disband from the Medvedev train. I'm quietly optimistic. I think he wins another for sure.
So I think we've done that trio to the death. That then does bring us really to the only other big question. I mean, there'll be questions about Dimitrov and Monfils and Sebastian Baez and Liam Brody as well, I'm sure, going into the Australian Open. But the next one on the agenda does have to be Rafa. I mean, I said before this tournament that I did expect him to beat Thiem, I have to say, but that was possibly as much as what I was expecting about Dominic than it was Rafa. I thought it was a good first round. Rafa could have got an unknown qualifier, if you like, and that would have been tricky for him for the first match, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if it was a random qualifier who just can do lights out tennis. And Karatsev in the second round could have been a tricky one as well, because we know what Karatsev can produce, especially in Australia.
Yeah,
not just the Australian Open, by the way, he got the semis, but he also won. Did he win Adelaide or something 2 or 3 years ago?
Sydney, I think he beat Andy in the final. Pretty sure.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, Jack.
It's all right.
I mean, within an hour of chatting, there's going to be a difficult defeat. You mentioned a random player like Karatsev, and yeah, there you go. So with Rafa, and I think I said something like, if he wins 2 matches here, that's sort of the what's the word, the cutoff or the money in, or whatever the expression is. Like, it's been an okay tournament, or if he wins today, even if he lost the next, I think because it's Thompson, it might change the narrative a bit. But if he'd lost to Humbert in 3 sets, but it was close, you'd be like, it's been a good week for Rafa,
Yeah, but then that's a different sort of player. Humbert's the kind of player who, he's got a better record against the top 10 than he does against the top 100.
There you go. Yeah, and that may, that him losing, therefore. Oh, sorry, he had to withdraw. Sorry, but him not making it, it makes that even more of a significance. But now I think it's probable that Rafa makes the semis, and there I think I mentioned in the live chat earlier that Dimitrov might stand in his way.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying. I still don't think Dimitrov's really got a chance. I'm sure the record there is pretty bad. Maybe it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be. Just tell you right now, Rafa is...
Didn't he beat him in 20...
Yeah.
One Australian Open semi-final, wasn't there, where he beat him?
That was 2017.
2017, yeah.
Yeah. He's 14-1 against Dimitrov.
Okay.
Yes.
That's maybe... What was the one?
I can't remember. It might have been... No, I'll find out for you. Beijing maybe rings a bell. I'll tell you right now, though. For some reason it's in Spanish, John. I should have forwarded this to yourself. Can I see it? There we go. Yeah, it was Beijing. There you go. Quarterfinal of Beijing in 2016.
Yeah, that's a huge gap, 14-1.
It's the one-hander, John. It's like if you're a one-hander, and if you're somebody who doesn't play as much. Agree,
but Stefanos has had his moments against Rafa.
That's what I was going to say. So he plays far more topspin than slice, where Dimitrov tends to rely on the slice, and that doesn't really work against Rafa, as I've pointed out in this match here. So it's the same as Domi Thiem as well. He's about the only one-hander that could match Rafa blow for blow in terms of power. Even Roger as well, obviously not. That's why the rivalry used to be so one-sided.
But maybe one little bit of hope for Dimitrov. I don't know how many of those 15 matches came on clay. The one win he did have was on a hard court, and I mean, maybe there's a peak Rafa in this tournament, and it might be now, if you like. I think in Rafa 2 years ago, we saw in that hard court period I was talking about that he got better and better and better, and particularly in Acapulco, funny enough, I think he was playing better even. Of course, I watched pretty much. I think I probably watched all of those 15 matches that he won. Mm-hmm. The performance against Medvedev, and who else did he play? He played Cam Norrie as well, and I think there was another match in the quarters. I can't remember who it was against. And I think it was like 6-love, 6-2 or something. And those three matches, the quarters, the semis, and the final in Acapulco, that's Indian Wells, he had a couple of hiccups. He was down a double break to Sebi Korda in the third. Of course, Taylor Fritz was the final where he was struggling with physical issues.
That was some Indian Wells, I got to say, by the way. He also beat Kyrgios and Carlos along the way, right? It was pretty impressive.
Yeah. And we've seen just how good Carlos can be at Indian Wells this year, where he was imperious. Yeah, so I forget the point I was trying to make, but I just think that for Dimitrov, you're right, and he'll, if Rafa gets there and wins the next match as well as this one in the kind of fashion that we sort of anticipate, then fine. But Dimitrov's form last year, it's something that's to be noted. And if you're going to beat Rafa, this is although it's not this is the best moment, surely. It's never going to get. I mean, maybe playing Rafa on a hard court 15 years ago, yeah, sure, but I don't know. I'm not. Well, the next 48 hours might say as well. I mean, Rafa could get broken back here and end up winning the third set in a tiebreak, or even whatever.
That little run there, John, begs to differ. Little passing shot off a drop shot from Kubler there. By the way, Kubler started to serve and volley a lot more. Purposeful serving volleys. It's great to see. A little change in tactics.
That little dink, his father there giggling. And that's something I noticed, by the way, when he was practicing last week. I just saw Carlos Moya actually in the background, just smiling for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's a good, because actually I was actually kind of, you watch 15, 20 seconds or whatever of Rafa, and you've seen all these clips and all the opponents and all these trainer partners were saying he's playing at a high level, but we still, they're not going to say anything else, I don't think. So I was really intrigued to just see Carlos, just say that basically. And just seeing that little dink that, by the way, reminded me of some shots of old, and even that Aussie Open final against Medvedev, partly because Medvedev was in no man's land and shouldn't really have been caught in that position, but still Rafa punished him with these little dinks he can do at the net with the great touch he has.
I know the one. Yeah, I think I know exactly the moment you mean.
The moment in particular, you know the one I mean.
Yeah. A great little fight back from Rafa in this game, by the way, to get to juice. That little dink shot proving the catalyst there to keep him in this one.
Jake, are you not a fan of Kubler? Because it sounds like that comment, Jake, is more like you want Kubler to lose than Rafa to win. But I'm sure you don't mean that, Jake.
I'm sure Jake's
in a good mood. He's a big Azarenka fan.
Is Azarenka doing well? I didn't even see that.
Yeah, she had a good win today, yeah.
Just checking that out. Azarenka winning against Burrell. Burrell, yeah, fair enough. Good win.
She had another good win as well this week. Maybe against tough. Oh, I know what it was. I was actually watching it. She was just struggling to get over the line, but the level was good from both players. Who was it she played in the previous round?
Kalinskaya,
yeah. It was a really good second set, actually, because I think she was up a break, but she got reeled in, and in the end, she had to get over the line via a tie break, maybe.
Yeah, it was. I think I just saw 10-8 or something along those lines. It was pretty close.
I tuned in at about 4-2 in the second set, and I thought, all right, I was probably done, but actually, Kalinskaya was bringing it.
Fist pump as Rafa breaks serve for a double break, 5-2 in the second set. It is looking good. for Rafael Nadal.
That's a masterpiece of understatement, Jack.
It's looking all right.
6-1-5-2-7 yeah.
Yeah, it's looking fine.
Okay, we need to get this question over and done with because we might have not much longer, which is basically Rafa Australian Open is the sort of second question because Novak, at least for now, we assume he's fit. That's not a question. That the only two questions, really, the big questions are those three that I just mentioned, and Rafa. What do we expect? What's a good tournament? What's not? What are we looking at?
The top four in the semis and Rafa to make the quarters.
Yes. So yeah, quarters. Yeah, that's.
So I would expect those four: Novak, Yannick, Carlos, Daniel, in the semis. Pretty much, no less. I think all four of them should be expecting to get that far because they're pretty far ahead of the rest of the pack. And if Rafa can make the quarters, I think he'd be very happy. And the reason, I'll back that up, it ties into something I said earlier, is that Rafa against 90% of the tour doesn't lose at the Australian Open. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere because he's that much better with the weaponry he's got than pretty much everybody else that's not got a big weapon in their arsenal. So, okay, John, if he does get drawn against somebody who can be a bit hot and cold, maybe...
The other thing, of course, is Rafa's draw. He could play Novak in round one.
Yeah, that's true. Could he actually... Will he not play off a protected ranking, or...
I don't know. I'm not sure to what extent. How much would that help, and what would that protected ranking be? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw him playing off a protected ranking of 9. I'm pretty sure recently. So,
really?
That would be this tournament though, and he wasn't seeded, so I don't really know how it works, John. To be honest,
no, I'm not sure. Maybe
I think your
live chat can tell us.
Yeah, potentially.
That would be, that would change everything if. Or even just a projected round 2 or round 3 against Novak. But
my educated guess is that he didn't play off of the protected ranking that he had, but on the ranking sheet or the sign-up sheet for Brisbane, whatever it would be, it has that protected ranking in brackets. So if he does choose to play off of that, that would be his ranking. If that makes sense.
As Terry says here, and I knew he was a wild card for this tournament. I'm watching Rafa serving, by the way. I probably am about 15, 20 seconds behind you, but goes down. I knew he was going to go down the tee with that one.
Because you can only play off a protected ranking ever so often, but can you do it at the slams? I don't really, but not seeded at AO. There we go.
Terry says protected ranking is possible at the AO. At least that's how I interpret what Terry's saying there. And if you say he's only allowed to do it so many times, of course it makes sense to go in on a wild card for Brisbane and protected ranking for AO.
Yeah, but I cannot, for the life of me, remember somebody taking a seeding with a protected ranking. So I think that's maybe what Terry's suggesting at a slam. I don't know if that's possible. But that would make a huge difference, John. So it would be interesting to find that out prior to the tournament starting, because you're quite right. A Rafa Novak first round would be a real shame for Rafa.
Yeah. That's the second funny thing. It's the second masterpiece of understatement since you said looking good for Rafa a minute ago. Not looking good for Kubler right now.
It's very British speak, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. So the draw will be arguably the most intriguing. We always say the draw is particularly intriguing, or this year's particularly open, but I don't remember a men's tournament in not living memory, that's the wrong word, but the last probably 2 decades that's really been open.
Yeah,
we'll have to wait for Novak and Rafa certainly Novak to retire, I think, to have that.
Outside of the very top players, outside of Rafa getting drawn against one of those 4 players, I do think there's a bit of danger in him drawing somebody who's just a big server, basically, who's
definitely bear in the first round, or
I actually might. I still feel
Jack
a bit
Draper.
like him there.
Draper,
maybe. I think that's a pretty bad matchup for Draper, though. Unfortunately, a lot of those lefty weapons getting neutralized by Rafa.
It was close last year.
It was, to be fair.
Set where he faded away physically.
I was more thinking somebody like, obviously, Hurkacz is a little too high ranked, but somebody like Hurkacz who's just going to rattle through service games over and over again.
I mean, her catch could be even if he does get this protected ranking, loose forehand there. Her catch is someone he could meet quite. He's someone he could meet in the third or fourth round and prevent that. Or Taylor Fritz, of course, with the big serve.
Yeah, Taylor Fritz is another player I was thinking of.
Just not in good form though, Fritz. That's the only thing.
And obviously, Taylor Fritz having the scalp at Indian Wells to draw from, having the match at Wimbledon that he probably coulda, shoulda won.
Taylor Fritz at his peak on grass and a hard court like 2 years ago, is a huge threat to Rafa, and that's a different Rafa as well. At least to the Rafa, we're not sure what Rafa is at right now.
Yeah,
Rafa hitting these forehands in third forehand in a row.
Wow, he does win it indeed.
I mean, it was a bit short that shot, but he's putting them away at the moment, and that's there was a comment in the chat earlier. I just see there's a conviction at the moment where that's probably what I would say is there seems to be a conviction, which there's no reason for this conviction other than 20 years of success. Because there's no reason for the conviction because he's not played for a year and he's only won 2 matches. But there's a conviction in it that maybe he's like, I'm just going for this and I believe I'm going to put this backhand away.
I mean, I don't think it's totally abnormal for Rafa. I don't think he's playing any more aggressively than usual. I just think the fact he is playing as well as he has before, I think that's not an overstatement. Is very promising.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of potential banana skins for Rafa in that ilk. And by the way, just commenting on Jake's, would love to see Rafa versus Cressy. Cool. I remember watching that match and loving it. It was so good. And there was a moment, I don't know if you remember it, John, but it was the first set. It was nip and tuck, 6-all, and Rafa comes up with an amazing passing shot because that's what you have to do against Cressy. Yeah. And it was fantastic. So good.
I mean, I remember watching the final. And it being nip and tuck. The second set, was it maybe 6-3, 6-4, something like that?
It was one break, but it was nowhere near as close as the first set, which felt like it could have went either way. And then there was a bit of Rafa brilliance, and it was fantastic, actually. It was a really good final.
But that was, I mean, Jake is possibly suggesting that Cressy hasn't reached his ceiling in that comment, but certainly in Cressy's career, that's as good. I remember that period. I think he played in the Australian Open and he played Daniel Medvedev, and we thought, okay, serve volley against Medvedev. I think it might have been third or fourth round. Am I dreaming? I don't think I'm inventing this, that they played each other.
That was a great match as well. It was very, very close. Medvedev really struggled. It was one of the best matches he played that tournament, if not the best. I thought it could have went either way as well.
So that was peak Cressy.
Yeah. It's been and gone, Jake. It's been and gone.
It may well have been gone.
So sorry, banana skins for Rafa at the Australian Open. If we're looking at big hardcourt servers, Ben Shelton is one that comes to mind.
Oh, yes.
Like Ben Shelton in the first round against Rafa, that would be 50-50, if not a little bit in Shelton's favour. That's going to be tough. At the same time,
they could play each other in the final here, by the way, in Brisbane.
Yeah, exactly, and I might change my mind by the time we get to the final. It depends if Rafa can keep this up. He has been looking pretty good. Poprin as well, honestly, one of those players that's just like, I mean, he beat Taylor Fritz last year at the Australian Open, doing that kind of thing, just made himself unbreakable for 5 sets, basically. And then Nico Jarry as well, here's another one. There's a bunch of these kind of big servey floating players who could trouble Rafa, given his game style. So
I agree. Some good names there, actually. And you wouldn't want him playing any of those in the first round either. All of those players you just mentioned, I think, are top 32, so they'll all be seeded.
Apart from Poprin. Poprin's unseeded.
Poprin unseeded. So that's he played, I think, Poprin in the first round at the French Open, I believe, a couple of years ago. Actually, the first set was actually close, especially for Rafa on the clay of Roland Garros. All right. Well, Rafa's chatting to the on-court interviewer right now, looking obviously pretty content.
And then, you heard it here first, John. Borna Goyo is one more. Just wanted to throw that.
Oh, yeah, Borna Goyo, who I saw him at and he's also a lights out guy as well, just off the ground as well.
He is, yeah.
I remember looking at him as a potential. Did he play Novak in New York?
Yeah, he did. And it wasn't bad actually. He did okay.
I mean, he was erratic, but that's kind of what you got to do against Novak on a hard court, especially or any court really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll give you that one. I mean, I even think Karatsev could have been tricky here, and and Humbert as well. But yeah, there's a few names there that you'd probably, from Rafa's perspective, want to avoid for a couple of rounds if possible. But that's a lot of names we've just mentioned. That is a lot. Now we've just mentioned 6, 7, 8, of which 2 or 3. Holger Rune, we didn't even mention him either, by the way. And I know he's obviously much higher up the rankings as well. But there's, I think maybe right now, even quarterfinal, looking back on that comment, might be a little optimistic in terms of it's doable, of course. And it's possible that he'll not have to play any of those players we just mentioned, and therefore he makes the quarters. Mm-hmm. But there's a chance he has to play 2 or 3 of them to make the quarters.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be honest, if I'm really boiling it down to what's going to make the biggest difference, it's probably the health of Rafa, because I do still think he beats these big servers if he's playing well. I think he beats probably most of the top 10. I'm going to say Rublev. I'm going to say Steph.
Well, then there's Steph as well. Rublev, I think, yeah.
I think Zverev could cause problems just given his game style. That's definitely a bit more of a danger.
Beating in Paris Bercy and at the ATP Tour finals in the last sort of few years.
Yeah, and same with Rune. Actually, you're right. I think Rune is a pretty tough matchup for Rafa if he's playing well too. But if Rafa could easily come through a pretty decent draw and wind up in the semis, but then I don't think he beats any of the 4 players, any of the big 4 we were talking about earlier.
He needs to get that ranking up as soon as possible as well. I mean, I don't know how soon he can make top 100, top 50, top 20, or top 32. Really is, I guess. Can he get there for Paris, for example?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think he can.
Yeah, it's a lot of matches have to win. All right, well, all over and done with in what was that, an hour and a half, I guess, altogether. Jack, wonderful to have you on board. Good to have Rafa back playing again. And this channel's been going 16 months, something like that, and we've not had many Rafa live streams. So trying to appreciate everyone we can.
Yeah, I'll hopefully be back soon, John. I'd be happy to join somebody for the final if I am about. So
if you're about, you mean Brisbane final?
Brisbane final, Brisbane final.
That'd be great if you're about, but we'll talk in the next few days, no doubt.
Great to see you, John.
Cheers, Jack. Take care.
See you soon.
And everybody else, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.